How do you feel about dating a man over 30 who hasn't yet had a serious relationship? Honestly, I know many wonderful men in their 30s with very limited dating experience who would make outstanding partners. That said, all new relationships have a learning curve. As long as you two are able to communicate openly and kindly about that stuff, go for it. Where is this? I've never met a single man in his 30s. Based solely on the integrity of character, I'm presuming from your username. You need to be dating my friends. Respectfully, I wonder if you may be putting the cart here before the horse. Opus. I would just take your new man as he is without trying to predict the arc of your relationship based on his history. Because his history could reflect so many different things. I would rather go to the source to get a full and specific answer than ask internet strangers what it all means. Because all we have are random guesses. I think looking out for hypothetical issues, rather than dealing with actual ones as they come up, is a form of self-sabotage. Almost. Like, if he actually turns out to be avoidant, then maybe his lack of relationship history will be the key to why. But until you run into those avoidant behaviors, then it's probably more harmful than helpful to anticipate and perhaps over-ruminate upon all these problems. This is very wise, and you're probably right that I'm looking for issues that don't exist because I'm scared and close to self-sabotaging. I married my husband when he was 29. He had dated one girl briefly in high school. That was it. Why? He was looking for a wife, and before me, he hadn't met anyone who he thought was a good fit for him. He didn't see the point in dating lots of people. My husband also rarely asks for anything. But that is because he doesn't really need anything. Tell him how you feel. I did. Perhaps he will speak up when there is something at some point. My husband did. Honestly, I think we get a skewed view of what is normal here in Reddit. It's okay to be okay. He's possibly okay. He's happy with himself. He's happy to be with you. He doesn't need you to do anything for him because he doesn't need you, which is good. His needs will change over time as all of ours do. But I wouldn't worry about it. From my experience, it sounds like you've found someone with whom you can have a drama-free relationship. That doesn't mean that there won't be tough times to work through. But it sounds like he would be happy to do the work necessary to make the relationship work. Enjoy. He doesn't really know what his needs in a relationship are. That's one issue. He will be learning what his needs are with your relationship. And it may not be what he thinks it is. On the flip side, he's had a ton of time to watch his friends make most of the mistakes. I've learned so much about what I don't want in a marriage from my married friends. My guy was mid-30s and had never been in a serious relationship before I met him. I think maybe his self-esteem had prevented him from being more proactive with women. I was very direct and asked him out. He is an absolutely wonderful partner. It took him a few months to get used to the relationship experience, but now that we've settled into a comfortable life together, you wouldn't be able to tell that he was such a late bloomer. Give him time and set clear expectations for what you need. And if he is worth it, he will quickly adapt. One thing to look out for: your first disagreements/arguments. Ideally, he has already learned how to have difficult conversations with non-partners. But relationship conflict can be challenging for someone who hasn't experienced it with a partner before, since a lot of us learn how to manage conflict over the years through our experiences. They may need guidance on how to manage conflict/communicate through rough patches in a healthy way. I'd want to be clear that it is not your job to teach them this. But personally, I found that being patient in this realm was worthwhile. This is important. Knowing how to deal with relationship conflict in an open way vs reactive way. I was the opposite, having only had short relationships myself. I'm glad my partner gave me a chance. I was gonna say, I'm a woman in my late 30s and haven't had any serious relationship experience either. If I were to enter into one, I'd be as open and honest as possible, flaws and all, because I think that's only fair. He had one long-term one before me, which was helpful because he knew some of the ebbs and flows of a relationship that I wasn't familiar with. I'm in this position too. My BF and I are both late 30s, and while I'm divorced and have had multiple long-term relationships, he has not had a serious partner since college. Honestly, He's the most wonderful partner I've ever had. He communicates openly and sincerely, including initiating conversations around needs and boundaries. He's sweet and respectful, and puts in the emotional work without my needing to ask. My favorite thing though, is that he's not jaded, and I can see how special our firsts are for him. Not every bachelor is like this obviously, but please don't write someone off for this one thing, unless it appears to come from an unhealthy place. He's been nothing but kind and considerate. He looks out for all of my needs. He puts so much effort into listening to what I need and giving it to me. He sounds like an absolute monster. It really seems like you're catastrophizing for no real reason. Opus. There are myriad reasons why he, or anyone, hasn't had a serious relationship. What matters is the kind of partner he is now to you. Right? The audacity of this guy. Lol. You're probably right. Thank you. It worked for me. My husband and I have been married for 15 years now. Hopefully, since you have brought it up, it is on his radar and he can pay attention to his own needs when they pop up. You don't want him to be resentful, and since he hasn't had any relationship experience, he might not know how to navigate that. I also worry about navigating natural ebbs and flow/low points in relationships when someone hasn't had relationship experience. Everything sounds fine now, and hopefully it stays that way. Having long-term relationships doesn't necessarily mean that you have actually learned anything or have become better at relationships. So many people become toxic and carry the baggage from their failed relationships for years and years. Some people just don't have the same experience in the love department simply because they didn't meet anyone that they click with earlier on in life. I wouldn't treat this person with any more caution than any other new relationship. I'd take someone with limited experience over someone who potentially has been abusive to past partners or has been in more relationships, but ones that were toxic. Has been a serial dater who jumps into relationships too fast cause they can't be alone. Judges me for the amount of relationship experience I have. If it's less than them, has been in more relationships, but isn't over them, or is still bitter about stuff from the past. The point is, being in a relationship/having had more relationships is not necessarily a good thing. You never know what really happened. Worst case, it's actually be a symptom of dysfunction. If he seems cool and kind, give him a chance. I wouldn't completely write him off, but I'd be cautious and looking out for how much work I was putting into it and what kind of effort he was making. I would also be watching for trauma landmines too. Long-held coping mechanisms can come apart when faced with the vulnerability that a relationship needs. Source: me. I dated a man who was 33 when I met him. He's had one relationship before me, and I wouldn't say it was super serious. He told me they basically just drifted apart in a year's time and stopped talking to each other. Lol. Like, if it was serious, I don't think you just fade each other out without talking about it. Lol. Anyway, I married the guy. He's super nice and a bit goofy. Very responsible. Amazing loving father. No one is perfect obviously. He needs to learn to communicate his feelings and needs, for one thing, but it's worked well. I'm 34F and I've never had a serious relationship, so no, it wouldn't bother me. I feel a little guilty knowing that he puts so much effort into listening to what I need and giving it to me, but I don't feel like I'm giving him anything in return. Will this equalize in time, or is it an issue? Are there other issues I should look out for? You need to communicate with him about this, and he needs to be willing to work on letting you in more. It may take him a while to feel comfortable admitting to having needs. This isn't necessarily a problem, unless it results in harm to either of you and is chronic. In the meantime, use your powers of observation. Take the time to learn about what he enjoys, what makes him smile, etc. Be an active listener when he's talking. He may very well be a happily independent person, but that doesn't mean you can't do things for him. Just that he doesn't need you in the dependent sense of the word. My partner was alone for a long time and is also very independent. He's an incredibly kind and giving person and honestly quite uncomfortable with receiving. Over time though, he has softened on this and come to appreciate that I enjoy being a giver too, and relax a bit into letting me reciprocate. I dated a man who was mid-30s, and he had never had a serious long-term relationship before me. And I don't know that I would do it again. He was a great person, but lacked the most basic of relationship skills, which combined with his independence and solitary life up until then created a stubborn refusal to be an actual partner. It was like a mental/emotional block, where he just didn't get why things were or weren't okay. Eventually I got tired of explaining to someone how to think of another person, not just yourself. Sounds like your guy may be more open than mine was, so by all means, give it a go. I think this is something that will equalize over time and better understanding of learning each other. I resonate with this. I'm 30 and my boyfriend of 5 years is 37, almost 38. I'm his first serious relationship like ever. I was really concerned at first, but he's such a kind, loyal, and loving guy to me. We have issues like any couple does, but communication is key. We can basically talk about anything, and always work through our disagreements. One thing I think is a plus is he hasn't been used to another woman and her ways, and his lack of relationship woman has worked to my favor in a sense, because he's sculpted to me, lol. I love this answer. I'm similar to the person you're dating. I had my first relationship experience in my 30s, though it was short, and didn't know how to voice my needs, because I was so used to doing everything on my own. Asking for anything seemed like too much. I can't speak for your boyfriend, but for me, I really did try to honor what the guy I was dating asked when he wanted me to voice my needs. It did take some time. It felt weird. Sometimes, it was even just letting him do things for me when he offered. I did need reassurance and reminders for a while. Sadly, in my experience, when I did speak up on some needs, which now I've learned were so basic, I shouldn't have had to ask for them, he shut it all down. That was the end. It was, essentially, my worst fear. It's taken a long time to heal from that, but I'm making progress. Outside of that, I've been working on voicing my needs in general with other people in my life. All this to say, I think the chances are good that your boyfriend will get used to voicing needs too. It might just take time and be gradual. Maybe it will also start with him accepting things that you offer to him. I expect you're meeting needs already that aren't so obvious. From my perspective, the main thing might be whether you see any growth from him on that, or if he staunchly stays in a state of not ever voicing any needs with you. I'm glad you found someone amazing. I hope it starts feeling more balanced for you. Sounds like he's seriously lucky with you too. My cousin recently got engaged to a man who never has a serious relationship before, and he's in his mid-30s. I think a lot of that was due to insecurity about being obese. Though he's lost the weight now, I think he seems like a great guy. They've been together for a couple years and no issues, so it's definitely possible for it to work out well. This sounds like it could be about avoidant attachment. It can be really difficult to have a healthy and satisfying relationship with someone who is avoidantly attached. But it's not impossible, although many people have sworn off dating them entirely because of painful experiences, myself included. Basically, you don't want to hope that you will be the exception to someone else's rule of behavior. You want to figure out how they tend to operate and assume that your relationship will unfold in a similar fashion. I would read up on the other characteristics of avoidant attachment to see if it matches up. https://www.freetotouch.com/individual characteristics. https://www.freetotouch.com/individual characteristics. Questions I would be asking, // what are his reasons for never having a serious relationship up until this point? Why is he ready now, // he isn't speaking up and asking for what he needs? Which doesn't mean he doesn't have needs. Does he communicate about feelings in general? // how does he handle conflict with friends, family, etc? Does he have direct, vulnerable conversations about how he feels? Or does he shove it all down and pretend it's fine / avoid the person he's upset with? The latter can create big problems in relationships, including being 100% blindsided by a breakup that seems like it's out of nowhere. // is he able to show up for your relationship consistently, or does he take a long time to reply to texts? Seem to need a lot of alone time, etc. Do you feel like you're getting progressively closer? Or do you feel like you're being held at arm's length? I could be wrong, but you can never be too careful with your big beautiful heart. I met my husband when he was 28 and he had never even dated. I do think he had a hard time telling me what he wanted. He was so afraid of losing in his mind the only woman who wanted him, I think. Now that's no problem. Give it time and talk and you will be fine if he's like my husband. Thank you for sharing this. As someone with very little relationship experience, nothing even sort of serious until my 30s, which resulted in big heartbreak, this gives me hope. I might find someone who is patient with me while I navigate some things for the first time. I know my inexperience may be a red flag for many, but I can't change the past, only what I do going forward. I've been learning a lot and making progress personally, but some things will come with the experience with another person. This is a tough one. My initial reaction is that's a red flag, but honestly I'm not so sure. Plenty of guys who have had LTR or who are even divorced are toxic AF. So I think if you're getting along well and both setting boundaries and have similar communication styles, it's a good thing. Perhaps recommend him some books about identifying relationship needs and boundaries. Good luck. I lean in this direction. Past relationships screw one up more than having been alone. I may be my own worst enemy, but at least I'm not making myself better towards all women. That said, bad habits can get deeply ingrained, a different issue, but something to look out for. As others have said, the key is for him to keep communicating and to be willing to change and adapt. If these hold true, I'm not worried. Why is he mid-30s and never had a serious relationship? A combination of things, I think. He was in a different state for many years and didn't want to date anyone because he knew he'd eventually move back. Also, he has had some brief relationships, but they didn't work out. We've discussed those situations, and he was very forthright with why they didn't work out and accepted his share of the blame. Please be cautious of the effort you're putting in vs him. This sounds like my past relationship and he developed into a true knock, and I had a traumatizing 2+ years. You're already feeling bad and that could grow into resentment. He might be wonderful, but if he isn't putting in effort, it's a red flag. A big one. He's almost 40. He might be wonderful, but if he isn't putting in effort, it's a red flag. A big one. Are you reading the same post I am? From Op. I feel a little guilty knowing that he puts so much effort into listening to what I need and giving it to me, but I don't feel like I'm giving him anything in return. Has he mentioned at all why he has never had a serious committed relationship? Is he happy? Could you offer to have him take the love language quiz? Maybe that would direct him to see what he may be interested in. Personally, hell no. It's a lot like hiring a 30-year-old with no work experience. Entry-level jobs are largely made available to young people because they're expected to have little to no work experience. The pay is low because the expectations of them are low too. You cannot expect senior or director level work from an inexperienced person. The same applies to a much older person who has never been in a relationship. Are you sure you're down to be his entry-level relationship? If you're willing and wanting to do it, that's all you. But personally, I just don't see myself being that desperate. Like, there are so many other options to choose from that resorting to a 30-year-old who has never had a girlfriend and is being so strange about his needs and wants is, I don't know, girl. I would personally feel desperate at being caught up in this situation. You're already doing so much heavy lifting for this person, and it sounds like you're willing to do the absolute most to make this work when the guy can't even communicate basic needs over to you. This is not promising of an equitable relationship where emotional labor is evenly distributed. You do you, but I think you also need to be realistic about whether or not desperation is a factor on your end and whether or not it's driving you to handle this grown man with kid gloves. I'd run. Personally, it is now a red flag for me if a man in his 30s hasn't had a serious relationship. Could be unfair of me, but after my experience and wasting 4 years of my life only to be dropped like a hot potato when I asked about the possibility of marriage, no, If they haven't been in a committed relationship yet, there is a reason. And I never indulge in this type of black and white thinking. I would be fine with it. Depending on the guy, it can be a green flag for me because it tells me that he has his own life and won't be too dependent or needy. I know some good men who are more focused on their education and careers, and their family and friends were enough companionship that they didn't really pursue relationships until they were serious about it. By then, they were in their late 20s 30s. Don't overthink it up. There might be some bumps, but again, a lot of new relationships have growing pains as you get to know each other better. If he's a good guy, otherwise just go for it.